In 2015, 4 pensioners pulled off Britain's biggest burglary. Their combined age? 270 years. The Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company was London's jewelry vault. Concrete walls 3 feet thick, motion sensors, alarm systems that connected straight to police. But these weren't ordinary thieves. Brian Reeder, 76 years old, a career criminal with 50 years of experience. His crew? All in their 60s and 70s, all old-school professionals. They spent months planning, rented a nearby building, studied the vault's layout. Over Easter weekend, they struck. They disabled the lift, climbed down the shaft, used a diamond-tipped drill to bore through solid concrete. 72 hours of drilling. They emptied 73 safety deposit boxes, 200 million pounds in gold, diamonds, and cash. The perfect crime. Until police reviewed the CCTV footage. One thief had a distinctive walk, a limp from an old injury. That walk led investigators straight to the crew, the oldest bank robbers in British history, caught by a hobble. In 1911, a handyman pulled off the most famous art theft in history by accident. The Mona Lisa wasn't even that well known back then, just another painting hanging in the Louvre. Vincenzo Peruggia was an Italian worker who helped install the glass cases protecting the artwork. He knew every corner of the museum. On a Sunday night, he hid in a supply closet and waited. The next morning, he simply walked up to the Mona Lisa, lifted it off the wall, and tucked it under his coat. He strolled right out the front door. Nobody noticed for 24 hours. The theft made international headlines. Suddenly, everyone wanted to see this mysterious painting. Even Pablo Picasso became a suspect. For 2 years, police searched everywhere. The biggest manhunt in art history. Meanwhile, Peruggia kept the Mona Lisa under his bed in Paris. He finally got caught trying to sell it to an Italian art dealer. He claimed he was just returning it to Italy where it belonged. The theft backfired completely. Instead of bringing the painting home, he made it the most famous artwork in the world. In 1978, a crew pulled off the biggest cash robbery in American history with military precision and inside help. The Lufthansa heist at JFK Airport netted $5.8 million in cash and jewelry. That's $24 million in today's money. Airport worker Louis Werner was drowning in gambling debts. He gave the crew everything they needed: which cargo to hit, security schedules, exact locations. On a cold December morning, 6 masked men struck. They knew exactly where to go, overpowered the guards in minutes, loaded truck after truck with cash and jewels. The entire operation took 63 minutes, but then the paranoia started. One by one, crew members began disappearing, shot execution style. The mob was eliminating witnesses. Only Henry Hill survived long enough to flip. His testimony to the FBI exposed the entire operation, and years later, his story became the inspiration for the legendary airport heist in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. The perfect inside job destroyed by the very violence that made it possible. Did you know a group of thieves got their nickname from hiding a stolen diamond in face cream, just like the Pink Panther movies? The Pink Panthers pulled off 380 heists across 35 countries. They stole $500 million worth of jewelry in 20 years. These weren't ordinary thieves. They rammed cars through storefront windows, used sledgehammers in lightning-fast raids, wore elaborate disguises that fooled everyone. In London, they walked into Graff Diamonds posing as customers. 20 minutes later, they walked out with $20 million in gems. In Tokyo, they hit Mikimoto pearls with military precision. When they got caught, they didn't stay caught. They escaped prisons using helicopters and motorcycles. The group came from the Balkans. Former soldiers turned master thieves. They knew how to plan, how to execute, how to disappear. Police created an international task force just to catch them. But the Panthers always stayed one step ahead. Their signature move? In and out in under 3 minutes. By the time alarms rang, they were already ghosts, the most successful jewelry thieves in history. In 1987, a wealthy Italian pulled off Britain's biggest bank heist by pretending to be just another rich customer. Valerio Vice spent months casing the Knightsbridge security deposit vault. He rented his own safe deposit box, studied the staff schedules, learned every detail of their security. On a quiet weekend when minimal staff was working, he returned with his crew. They cut through reinforced steel like butter, emptied 60 safe deposit boxes filled with cash, gold, and priceless jewels. The heist was nearly flawless. Police had almost nothing to go on. But VK made one tiny mistake. He left fingerprints on a glass of water. His extravagant lifestyle drew attention. Expensive cars, lavish parties. For a man with no legitimate income, he was living too well. When police tracked him down, he was trying to collect a Ferrari. The mastermind behind Britain's most sophisticated vault penetration was caught by the simplest evidence. VK died in prison before his trial ended. The perfect criminal undone by a single glass of water. Perfect criminal undone by a single glass of water. In 1987, a wealthy Italian pulled off Britain's biggest bank heist by pretending to be just another rich customer. Valerio Vice spent months casing the Knightsbridge security deposit vault. He rented his own safe deposit box, studied the staff schedules, learned every detail of their security. On a quiet weekend when minimal staff was working, he returned with his crew. They cut through reinforced steel like butter, emptied 60 safe deposit boxes filled with cash, gold, and priceless jewels. The heist was nearly flawless. Police had almost nothing to go on. But VK made one tiny mistake. He left fingerprints on a glass of water. His extravagant lifestyle drew attention. Expensive cars, lavish parties. For a man with no legitimate income, he was living too well. When police tracked him down, he was trying to collect a Ferrari. The mastermind behind Britain's most sophisticated vault penetration was caught by the simplest evidence. VK died in prison before his trial ended. The perfect criminal undone by a single glass of water. In 1993, an armored car driver pulled off one of the boldest heists in Las Vegas history by simply driving away with $3.1 million. Heather Talchief worked for Loomis Armored, driving trucks full of casino cash. She seemed like the perfect employee, reliable, trustworthy, clean background. But she was secretly dating Roberto Solis, a convicted killer with a plan. They studied her routes for months, learned the pickup schedules, identified the perfect moment to strike. On October 1st, Talchief made a routine stop at the Circus Casino. Her partner went inside to collect the money bags. That's when she made her move. She simply drove away with the armored truck, left it at a shopping center and vanished. Within hours, she and Solis were on a plane to Amsterdam with new identities. For 12 years, Talchief lived as a fugitive, raised her son across different countries, always looking over her shoulder. In 2005, she finally surrendered to the FBI. She served only 5 years in prison. Solis remained free until 2012. The money was never recovered. In 1979, France's most wanted criminal was gunned down in broad daylight by 20 police officers. But Jacques Mezrine had become something nobody expected, a folk hero. Mezrine wasn't your typical bank robber. He wore elaborate disguises, fake police uniforms. He'd walk into banks like he owned them, charm the tellers, then walk out with their money. But his real talent? Escaping prison. 4 separate times, Mezrine broke out. He sawed through bars, took hostages. Once he simply walked out disguised as a guard. Between escapes, he kidnapped a millionaire, gave interviews to reporters, even wrote his autobiography from his prison cell. His accomplice and lover, Sylvie Jean-Jacques, helped him stay one step ahead of police for years. The French media couldn't get enough of him. Here was a criminal who was polite, intelligent, and seemingly unstoppable. On November 18, 1979, police finally cornered Mezrine's car in Paris. 20 officers opened fire. The man they called Public Enemy Number 1 was dead. But his legend had just begun. His story inspired countless films and books. The gentleman bandit who captured a nation's imagination. In 2004, criminals pulled off the largest bank heist in British history without firing a single shot. The Northern Bank in Belfast seemed secure. But these thieves had a different plan entirely. For months, they watched bank employees, learned their routines, studied their families. Then one December night, they struck. Armed men stormed into 2 bank workers' homes, held their families hostage overnight. Wives and children, terrified, told to stay silent or die. The next morning, those bank employees had to go to work, act completely normal, smile at co-workers, answer phones, all while their families sat with guns pointed at them. At closing time, the employees let the criminals inside. 26.5 million pounds walked out the front door. The psychological torture was flawless. No alarms, no violence at the bank, just pure terror used as a weapon. Police arrested suspects, recovered some cash, but most of the money still missing. 20 years later, millions remain hidden somewhere. The perfect inside job that left families traumatized and investigators baffled. Did you know one man robbed over 100 banks and became America's most famous gentleman thief? Willie Sutton was a master of disguise. Police officers, mailmen, maintenance workers, he fooled everyone. For 3 decades, from the 1920s to 50s, Sutton terrorized banks across the country, but he never fired his gun at anyone. His secret? Meticulous planning. He'd study bank layouts for weeks, map out every entrance, time the guards' routines. On robbery day, he'd walk in wearing his perfect disguise, politely ask for the money, and disappear. But Sutton was equally famous for his escapes. He dug through prison walls with makeshift tools, outsmarted guards at every turn. When reporters asked why he robbed banks, they claimed he said, "Because that's where the money is." Sutton later denied ever saying it. After multiple captures and escapes, he was finally sentenced to life in prison. In 1969, poor health earned him freedom. He became a celebrity, appearing on talk shows and writing books. The gentleman bandit had won his final escape. In the 1990s, children in Colombia started disappearing at an alarming rate. Hundreds of them, all boys between 8 and 16. The killer walked among them every day, completely invisible. Luis Garavito wasn't what you'd expect from history's most prolific serial killer. He looked harmless, grandfatherly. He'd dress as a priest, offering candy and small gifts to street children. Sometimes he was a beggar, sometimes a vendor, always patient, always kind. He'd gain their trust over days or weeks, then offer them work in a distant town. The boys would follow him willingly into remote areas. What happened next was unspeakable. Garavito kept detailed journals of every murder, over 400 children. He drew maps to their burial sites like a twisted treasure hunter. Colombia's civil war provided perfect cover. Missing children were just another tragedy in a country torn apart by violence. When police finally caught him, Garavito confessed to everything. He cooperated fully, leading them to mass graves. His reward? Just 22 years in prison. He walked free in 2021. In 1923, the Osage Nation were the richest people per capita in America. Oil beneath their Oklahoma reservation made them millionaires overnight. Then they started dying. One by one, Osage families were being eliminated, poisoned, shot, blown up in their own homes. The murders weren't random. They were calculated. White men married Osage women, then killed them for their oil money. Local sheriffs looked the other way. Doctors falsified death certificates. Insurance companies paid out massive claims without question. William Hale orchestrated it all. He called himself the King of the Osage Hills and systematically planned the murder of entire families. Over 60 Osage people died in what became known as the Reign of Terror. Local authorities were either bought off or involved. So the federal government sent in a new agency called the FBI. Agents went undercover, gathered evidence, built cases. When they finally arrested Hale, the conspiracy unraveled. Dozens of co-conspirators were exposed. Hale got life in prison. The FBI got its reputation. But for the Osage Nation, justice came too late. September 26, 1983. One man held the fate of the world in his hands. Soviet Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov was monitoring early warning systems when alarms screamed through the bunker. 5 American missiles, incoming. Protocol was crystal clear. Report the attack immediately. Trigger automatic nuclear retaliation. Millions would die within hours. But something felt wrong. Petrov stared at the flashing screens. His gut told him this wasn't real. He had minutes to decide. Follow orders and potentially end civilization, or trust his instincts and risk his country's destruction. Petrov chose silence. He was right. A satellite had mistaken sunlight reflecting off clouds for missile launches. A computer glitch that nearly triggered World War III. His superiors weren't grateful. They interrogated him, forced him into early retirement for breaking protocol. The incident stayed classified for decades. No medals, no recognition. Just a man who saved the world and got punished for it. One split-second decision. 7 billion lives hanging in the balance, and history will barely remember his name. Did you know a convicted murderer once convinced French authorities to let him design his own luxury prison? Henri Scariest, nicknamed Papillon, was sentenced to life on Devil's Island in 1931. This wasn't just any prison. It was a death trap in French Guiana where most inmates died within their first year. But Papillon was different. He manipulated guards, bribed officials, eventually convinced them to let him build La Cathédrale, his own private prison wing complete with a pool, restaurant, and conjugal visits. When that wasn't enough, he planned his escapes. He floated away on coconut rafts, bribed boat captains. Each time they caught him, his punishment got worse. 13 years in solitary confinement. Complete darkness. He nearly went insane. At age 60, when most men would give up, Papillon made one final escape attempt. He jumped off a cliff into shark-infested waters and somehow survived. His story became a best-selling book and Hollywood film starring Steve McQueen. But here's the twist. Investigators now believe half his escapes never happened. The ultimate con man fooled the world twice. In 1995, millions of people took the Tokyo subway to work. They had no idea they were about to become test subjects in a chemical weapons attack. On March 20th, cult members boarded 5 different train lines during rush hour. They carried plastic bags filled with homemade sarin nerve gas. They punctured the bags and walked away. Within minutes, passengers began collapsing, foaming at the mouth, convulsing on the platform floors. 13 people died. Thousands were injured. The attackers belonged to Aum Shinrikyo, a group that looked like peaceful Buddhist meditators. But their leader, Shoko Asahara, had been secretly preparing for war. Investigators discovered underground factories producing deadly toxins. The cult had recruited scientists and engineers. They'd already used VX gas in previous assassinations. Asahara believed he was Japan's rightful ruler. His followers had tried to obtain nuclear materials and biological weapons. The most terrifying part? The victims were chosen completely at random. 9 ordinary commuters heading to work on a Tuesday morning became casualties in one man's delusional quest for power. Did you know America's Ellis Island of the West was actually a house of horrors? From 1910 to 1940, Angel Island Immigration Station held a dark secret. Chinese immigrants arrived seeking the American dream. Instead, they became human test subjects. Under the cover of routine health screenings, doctors conducted brutal medical experiments. They injected untested vaccines into helpless detainees. They deliberately exposed prisoners to deadly diseases just to watch what happened. Immigration officials invented fake medical conditions to justify sending people back. Families in China waited for relatives who would never come. The immigrants were trapped, held for months in filthy barracks, subjected to invasive procedures that made them sicker. They couldn't refuse treatment. They couldn't report the abuse. To the doctors, these weren't patients. They were convenient lab rats. Medical records reveal the horrifying truth. Systematic torture disguised as healthcare. Vulnerable people exploited by the very system meant to protect them. While Ellis Island welcomed Europeans with open arms, Angel Island turned the American dream into a living nightmare. Some horrors hide in plain sight. In 1990, 2 men walked into Boston's most secure art museum and pulled off the greatest art theft in American history. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum was supposed to be impenetrable. Motion sensors, armed guards, bulletproof glass. But these thieves had done their homework. For months, they studied the security routine. They knew exactly when guards would be most vulnerable during the 3 a.m. shift change. On St. Patrick's Day, they knocked on the door dressed as Boston police officers. "We're responding to a disturbance call." The guards let them in. 81 minutes later, they walked out with $500 million in artwork, 13 priceless pieces, 2 Rembrandts, a Vermeer, a Manet. They duct-taped the guards and methodically cut paintings from their frames. But here's the strangest part. They ignored even more valuable pieces hanging right next to their targets. The FBI has investigated for over 30 years. No usable evidence, no arrests. The museum still offers a $10 million reward. Empty frames hang where the masterpieces once were. America's greatest art heist remains completely unsolved. In the 1920s, young women lined up for dream jobs painting watch dials. The pay was good. The work seemed easy. Their bosses told them the glowing radium paint was completely safe, even healthy. Supervisors taught them to lick their brushes for finer points. Some girls painted their nails and teeth with the glowing substance for fun at parties. But within a few years, their jaws began rotting away. Their bones became so brittle, they snapped from simple movements. Tumors consumed their bodies from the inside. These were the radium girls, and their employers knew exactly what would happen to them. When the dying women tried to sue, the company used its wealth to delay trials for years. Many died waiting for justice. Their courage in fighting back changed worker safety laws forever, but the price was unimaginable. Today, nearly a century later, their bones are still radioactive. Their graves still glow. The Radium Girls paid the ultimate price to expose how far corporations will go to protect their profits over human lives.